are you? Today I wanted to talk about the first bootleg Tom Waits record that I have from 1973, just before the release of his second record, The Heart of Saturday Night. And it's a folk scene broadcast from KPFK, I believe in October of 1973. So it's a full year before the release of his second album, but a lot of the songs featuring on it are from his first two records. It features short interview segments between each song. The host I don't know the name of. Maybe you know and can tell me, I would be much obliged. But yeah, it's a fantastic record. It starts out with Virginia Avenue, and it immediately sets Tom off in the live setting, and kind of it demonstrates his distinct skill for the live realm, essentially, and his voice is immediately quite different to the studio recordings. It's kind of grittier, more raw, but he's clearly very comfortable in a live setting. And then we get the first interview where he gives just incredibly honest answers about his background and his personal life. Obviously, there's no Tom Waits persona yet. So, it's one of those rare occasions where Tom Waits is just answering the interviewer's questions as best he can. So, it's quite an eye-opener on first listen, but still fascinating stuff. He clearly already has a very developed wit and humour where you don't quite know when he's joking and when he's being serious, but really interesting stuff, especially for this early part of his career where obviously it's a lot harder to find information about him. Then we move into San Diego Serenade, where he mentions in the interview beforehand that he wrote this song with Ray Charles in mind, who was apparently one of his biggest influences. And it's a beautiful rendition. It's completely heartfelt. I'd possibly prefer this to the studio recording. It feels a lot more genuine, in my opinion. Then the next interview segment talks about him making his way onto the live scene, playing in pubs, and hinting at his first gigs at the Troubadour as well, which is where obviously he became such a big name, and very much attributed to. Then we move into the first hit, Old 55, which, is obviously just always going to be a beautiful performance, great piano playing. The phrasing is gorgeous, and he actually says it's an older song, which is interesting considering this is only his debut record, and he's already calling this his older song, so it's quite, I don't know what year he actually wrote it, but, compared to a lot of the other songs on his debut record, he must have been so young writing this, absolute classic, which is just even more incredible. And then the next interview talks about when he meets Herb Cohen, and signs with Asylum. Talks about his first tour and everything, which was lasted 2 months, I believe. And it took him to places that he'd never even been before, and now he's performing gigs. It's just wonderful to hear, to be honest. He introduces his band and talks about writing for other people. He was one of those songwriters that never actually intended to perform as a soloist. His aim was just to write songs for, singers who don't write their own stuff. And he just said no one would record him yet, so he had to perform them himself, and maybe one day that'll change. Which is obviously ironic considering what he's gone on to do, but that's just the charm of this record, to be honest. Hearing these just snippets of gems, it's really fascinating to listen to. Then then we move into Semi-Suite, where he plays with his voice beautifully, to be honest, similarly to the way he does it on the record, actually. It's just really dynamic and interesting. And obviously to do this in a live setting, just off the back of his first quite short tour, he just seems so confident and relaxed, like he was born for this role. I think he said later on in his career that during these years he was always quite nervous, and he's always been quite a shy guy in general, but honestly you would not be able to tell the way he performs his music. He performs as well here as he always has done in his later career, as we know him as. So yeah, again, just really interesting to see. Then we move into Fumbling with the Blues, and the way the introduction to this song is brilliant. The way he kind of sets up the groove and doesn't initially give away everything in the song, but then he just starts, smashing that piano, and the drive just hits. He just builds it perfectly, and his presence is incredible. The fact that he can kind of build that landscape just as a solo artist with no one else other than the interviewer in the room. It must have been an intimidating environment, to be honest, but he just works it beautifully. Then the next interview excerpt talks about the music that he likes to listen to, again mentioning Ray Charles, and how he's already looking for a diversity in his writing. I think the interviewer said that he can't really tell who his influences are because his music is kind of quite diverse. And so yeah, it was interesting hearing how Tom was already looking to explore different avenues of songwriting even before he met, way before he met Kathleen and before he took that dramatic shift that we know he later came into. But it was also interesting hearing that he prefers writing on the piano, even though he'd played guitar most of his life and had only started piano a few years before, I think. But he just said that songs come easier to him on the piano, and they're more difficult to pick out on a guitar, which I found interesting. And then he talks about recording his next album, obviously The Heart of Saturday Night. He spoke about hopefully recording it next month, which was interesting because obviously it wasn't released for another 11 months, I don't think. I think he was still performing later in 1973, so maybe that got in the way, but I'm not sure when the Saturday night sessions actually took place, so it might have already happened, I'm not sure. Then he goes into another piano ballad, Rosie, and it's at this point that I just thought, God, how does he have this many hits already? Like, this is his debut record, and you're kind of playing each song, and I think, oh, I love this one, oh, I love this one. And it's his debut, he's not released many songs at all, but they're just all so good. And obviously the high notes in this are incredible, and he hits everyone perfectly every time. I'm yet to hear a live performance of it actually where it's a bit rough or he doesn't quite get there. It's just amazing how he does it night after night. And the next interview talks about how he's basically always wanted to become a musician, and that he started writing in 1968 or 69, which I found very interesting. It's not something that he'd kind of been doing since he was little. His music was quite a late part of his teens, really, before he started taking it seriously. And he also mentions Jack Tempchin, who features later on this record, and apparently he was a huge inspiration for Tom, and they became very good friends, kind of meeting each other on the live scene and eventually performing together a lot. Then the next song is Depot Depot, which he performs in a much more improvised style to the studio version, which I found interesting. And kind of, to be honest, just really fun to see how he's already experimenting with new styles. Really jazzy, obviously a big contrast to the kind of laid back late night blues of closing time. So yeah, just really good to see him experimenting. Then the next interview is actually a bit awkward now, in a modern context, because they talk about Joey Esther, the producer, and it's just, obviously they have nothing but praise to say for him, and up until very recently, respectively, we thought of him as a lovely guy, just a nice family guy with a great talent for production, worked with a lot of big names, just an incredible producer. Then if you don't know, in 2017 it came out that he was convicted for possession of child pornography, in I think 8 cases of possession and dealing. It was just an absolute shock. His band members was shocked. They obviously had to cancel the tour dates. I think he was found guilty the day before a record came out of theirs, actually. It just threw everything up in the air. It was actually absolutely shocking. No one who knew him saw it coming. It was just not like him at all. But yeah, I guess people can just surprise you and have these awful secrets, So yeah, a very uncomfortable exchange, to be honest, in the modern context. But obviously they had no idea back then. It only came out in 2017, as I said. I think he paid his way out of it initially, and then in 2019 he got finally a 2-year sentence. I think the less said about that, the better. Then Tom, but back to this record, and on a more positive note, Tom moves over to the guitar and plays another classic, I Hope I Don't Fall in Love with You, from Closing Time, which is actually a request from the host. He actually asked for this song earlier on in the piece, which just goes to show that obviously it was impossible to know back then, but right now, in today's era, this song is one of Tom's most popular songs. I think anyone who isn't a Tom Waits fan still likes this song and probably knows it. So I just thought it was really interesting to see that clearly that with the host asking for this song to be played, it must have been popular back then as well, and kind of showing the signs that it was going to be big. And then the next interview talks about Jack Kerouac and his obviously big inspiration for Tom, before playing Heart of Saturday Night, which was heavily inspired by the themes of On the Road, I imagine. And the way Tom performs is just so beautiful. There's so much sincerity in this delivery. The way he weaves the melody with the guitar accompaniment is just effortless and sublime. Yeah, I could listen to this song all day. It never gets old. Then the next interview kind of talks about his songwriting habits and how he does what he does. He kind of said that he can't force them. Very much to his later interviews in, the kind of post-2000s Tom era. He kind of says that you can't force it. You just have to you just have to catch them when they arise, and often the ones that you have to work the most for are actually the worst songs, and the ones that come out easier because they're the better songs, and you know that they're probably going to end up the better result and the ones that are going to end up on the record. And Heart of Saturday Night was one that he apparently just thought of in 5 minutes, and I can completely believe that, because it's one of my favourites of his. Especially of this early era. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And then we move into Ice Cream Man, of course, with that iconic piano intro. I don't think Tom actually plays the piano on the studio version, but obviously this is just a solo performance, and it's just such a confident delivery that I don't think this song would work with a more timid performance, but he just delivers it with 110%, and it just works because of it. and I think just further shows off his range and styles. It's just so upbeat and jazzy and quirky and different to a lot of the melancholic and kind of closing time bar blues that he's developed a style for in this early era. Then the next and final interview before closing off the record introduces Ray Burl's next cover, Phantom 309, who I didn't know was actually a close friend of Tom's. I thought, he was just a singer of the time that he admired, but they actually performed together a lot, and had a great mutual respect for each other, which I found interesting. And speaking of Ray, he's still alive, I believe, and singing and, being as brilliant as ever. And I was just searching him up through the pandemic, I believe, and he was doing these fantastic lockdown sessions where he just performed his favourite songs, in his home. And he was fantastic. I can't remember how old he is now, but he's still got it for sure. And it's involved a lot of Tom covers. I don't remember him doing Phantom 309. I was really keen for him to do it, but I don't think he did. But yeah, I think he did a lot of Tom songs, from Mule Variations, a lot of his later stuff, and they just have a wonderful mutual respect for each other. So it is, beautiful to see this early on in Tom's career, which is why the records like this are such hidden gems, I think. And even if you're not a big fan of the songs or Tom's early era, it's just really worth listening to. And then obviously we close this record with Phantom 309, or this particular live performance with Big Joe and Phantom 309, a Red Sovine cover. Just a beautiful performance. It's one of Tom's most overlooked covers, I believe, but every time I go back to it, it just knocks me back every time, even though I know the story, obviously. It's the delivery, and Ray Burl's cover as well. Beautiful. If you like Tom's version, have a listen to Ray's as well, because it's worth all the praise that Tom gives it. They're both just the perfect storytellers for this song. Then that's the end of the folk scene broadcast, and then the final side features 5 bonus tracks from a live performance of Tom's from November in 1973, a month after the radio broadcast, which starts off with Friday's Blues, another cover and a gorgeous delivery from Tom, Shiver Me Timbers, Diamonds on My Windshield, which is a fully spoken version, which is very interesting to see, just, kind of as a spoken poem, a witty and beautiful performance, just everything that makes Tom brilliant in this one work. Everything you hope for is absolutely brilliant. Then we move into Getting Drunk on a Bottle, which is one of my actual personal highlights of this record. The way he works the crowd and just kind of builds and develops this beautifully simple tune from this one verse, with humour and sincerity. It's just, again, Tom at his best. I think Tom in a live setting is where he comes into his own, and I think, which is why that they released Nighthawks when they did, because I think the studio records were amazing, but they could tell that I think Tom just was something special, and it's really apparent when he's in a live setting. And there's no better evidence than this, I believe. Then the final closing track of this record and this second performance is T. Yuana, featuring Jack Temchin on backing vocals, who I didn't know had written a lot of the Eagles' best hits, which was a strange old crossover, but obviously with them covering all 55 as well. But their chemistry on this is just fantastic. His backing vocals are gorgeous. The lyrics are hilarious and heartbreaking at the same time. The crowd are cracking up. The atmosphere is perfect. It's absolutely brilliant. I had this record on quite late at night with the window open. It was drizzling but not fully raining. The sun had gone down, but it wasn't, pitch black. It was just the perfect atmosphere for this setting. And I was just immersed. It was like I was there in 1973 on that night, with those people, with these amazing artists. It really felt like an honour and a privilege to listen to be honest. The perfect way to close the record. If you haven't heard of it, I cannot recommend it enough. If you love Tom in this early era, this really is a treasure. But yeah, that's everything I love about this record. There's nothing I don't like about it, to be honest, apart from that it's not long enough. And it already is a very long record. So that just tells you everything you need to know. But I cannot advise you enough to go listen to it, if you can. If you already have, I would love to know your thoughts. Apart from that, I hope you're doing amazingly. Thank you very much for listening, and I will speak to you again very soon. Goodbye.